Did you see his goal a couple weeks ago versus Dallas?
Oh, and Tippett turbocharge time. Tippett spins, backhander, he scores! Somehow, he just one-upped himself from the other night.
Yep, definitely
That
did.
is that is
You're right
so
for calling me
far.
out for forgetting about him because he's been a revelation this year. I was focusing more on like an influx of new players, but getting a breakout guy like him, like a breakout season from a guy like Owen Tippett, that's basically like having a new player.
Hello and welcome to the New Wave Hockey Podcast, now brought to you in live and living color. I'm your host, Link Dansevich, and today we've got a very special guest. As you can see, his name's David Gold. He is a senior in the David B. Falk College of Sport and Human Dynamics, right? Am I saying that right?
Dynamics, yeah.
And he also is the president of the SU Hockey Analytics Club. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited. I caught your episode, especially with Mr. Robert Yardley, one of our club members, and now part of our board. Really like hearing him talk about hockey, and I really like hearing you talk about hockey, except for maybe the Flyers stuff. But we can get past that. I'm just excited to be here and talk some puck with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really sorry for our consistent listeners. I mean, I brought another Rangers fan on the podcast. My apologies. That's all they have here in Syracuse, New York. It's a shame, but yeah, we have a lot to get into, don't we, Dave? There's just so much right now. So, but yeah, dude, crazy. How are you feeling today? We were me and David we just came back from floor hockey, and he voluntarily played goalie, and he took a beating in net. How are you feeling, by the way?
Not a goalie by trade, yeah. It was a little tough. I feel a little bit like Igor Shesterkin, faced a lot of big breaks. Couldn't really save a lot of them. But I'm looking forward to learning more. I'm usually playing as a skater. We don't skate, but we play on the floor. But it's fun playing goalie sometimes, you know? You get to see the game in a way you don't usually see it. So
Exactly. I know. Yeah, you kind of get beat up in net sometimes. Let's start with the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about this. We are in the All-Star break right now. We're essentially over halfway through the season. The trade deadline is in less than a month. There's a ton of action that's going to be happening very, very soon. David, let's get right into like these standings. All right. These are some tight races here. Let's look at the Atlantic first. Let's be alphabetical and, do everything the right way. The Boston Bruins still hold a stranglehold on the top of that Atlantic division, followed by the Panthers in second. And then a long way down, you've kind of almost got a three-way tie for third: Lightning, Maple Leafs, and Red Wings. And then you got everyone else. David, who's the most surprising team from this conference this year?
it might be weird to say after the season they had last year, but I honestly think the Bruins might be the most surprising team just because they lost their two top centers. And we're thinking, wow, they're not going to have any depth. They're really going to be tested. They have one of the worst farm systems in the league, according to pretty much anyone you ask that knows prospects. But they've got their guys, and despite a thin lineup on paper, they've still been producing. They had a pretty rough stretch around late November, early December, but they've rebounded back into form. And is it true are they top for the President's Trophy right now? They're around there for sure.
They are, let me actually like check. They're tied with the Canucks at the moment. So yeah, they essentially are, which
2011 rematch?
I would love it, but
That's what I'm looking for.
you know how I am about my Eastern Conference teams.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't like any of them unless they're from Philadelphia.
exactly.
But
Uh-huh.
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I don't know if you saw this, but early in my season predictions, I had the Boston Bruins just barely missing out on the playoffs because I really thought they couldn't recover from losing a good third of their forward depth. That is ridiculous. Um, but they've rebounded to form. I'm especially really just impressed with their defense. How they've been able to replace just broken parts with guys like Mason Lohrei. It's really been incredible. And plus Ullmark, I knew he was not a really great statistical goalie. I felt like last year was a flash in the pan, but Jeremy Swayman stepped up in his he fell back to form, but Swayman has become incredible in his footsteps, and that's really what's been contributing to their success right now. They've got two hot goalies, and you can't really beat that. Well, I think there's a couple of things that could beat that, but yeah. But just to counter your point, I would say the team that's most surprising from this division, nobody talks about the Senators and how bad they are. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, they signed Vladimir Tarasenko. they looked like they had the steps and the roster to compete. What's going wrong in Ottawa right now?
Well, I can tell you that some things don't change. Like you can look at all the stats, you can look at all the players, but sometimes when I'm making my standings predictions or playoff predictions, I've learned to just accept that some things will always be the same. And we always talk every year about how this is the year the Bruins finally crash down, or this is the year that the Senators finally put it all together and make the playoffs again. And despite some moves that would suggest that both of those are going to happen, they just don't. The Bruins, staying alive this year, I think I had them around third or second in my prediction, so I thought they'd still hang around. Senators, I don't think I had them in the playoffs, but I did definitely think they'd be a lot better. Last year, I mean, they made all those additions to the forward core, including your former guy, Claude Giroux. They have Tarasenko this year, who I missed from last year. Very good piece to the team, very good complement to a line. Like if you pick up Giroux and Tarasenko and they're complementary pieces to your core, you'd expect them to be going places. But I actually attended the Rangers Senators game the other day. I think it was last Saturday, and we beat them 7-2. And this is a Rangers team that wasn't really doing very well in the last month that we'll get to a little later. But the Senators just, I don't think they have that much of a direction. They fired their coach early this year. I think Jacques Martin is still doing the interim coaching duty. So I think until they find a stable head coach, I think they're still going to be in this kind of state of limbo where they aren't really winning, they aren't really competing, but they're not losing enough to get any more draft picks.
And yeah, it's just really a shame. As somebody who kind of thought they like well, I thought for a second that they won the Alex DeBrincat trade. Nowhere near is that true. They really just look like they've fallen off a cliff. It's a shame, and I think a lot of it has to stem from goaltending too. Huge factor because everyone thought that Korpisalo was either going to be a Vezina Trophy winner or he was going to absolutely crap the pan, and he did
Yeah,
one of those things.
he's just such an inconsistent goaltender. And I knew that as soon as he finished the season strong with LA last year, he was going to get a bloated deal because everybody was going to see that and think, oh, okay, Columbus was holding him back. But really, like you see stretches with him, like the 2020 playoffs, he had that game with 70, 80 odd saves in the loss against Tampa game one. But then he sort of faded into obscurity as Elvis took the role. Then he got traded last year, had a pretty decent end of the season with LA. I don't really know how to gauge him. I don't think he's a really long-term option. I think that they should have given him maybe a stopgap deal or even looked at like a 1 year, 2 year backstop just so they could save time for Gustafson, or sorry, not Gustafson, Forsberg or Sogard or anybody else they might have in the pipeline, even drafting someone.
I really like Shogard. I think he's a really nice piece. Um, Another thing too, the Metropolitan is kind of weak this year, I would say, as a Flyers fan. You've got three teams that are fighting for third. They've all essentially got the same record. 58 points for the Leafs and Red Wings and 59 points for the Lightning. No one is even close to 58 points besides the Hurricanes and Rangers in the Metro. It's not impossible to think that five teams will get in from the Atlantic Division. Do you which of the five which sorry, the better question is which of the three like bottom teams do you think is going to finish a wild card spot or that third Atlantic spot? Is the Lightning, the Leafs, and the Red Wings? Which one do you
Yes.
think is gonna get on top? Because they've all had their struggles this season.
Gotcha. Okay, so I have a ready answer for who I'm not going to pick. Before the season, I said this is the year the Lightning missed the playoffs, and I was a little unsure of it at the time, just because it's really tough to predict the team that won back-to-back cups, made three in a row, not too long ago, is going to fall off. But really, the core is just getting old. They're still producing, but also I think the salary cap is working against them. They don't have any LTIR players at the moment. They made some decent depth signings. I always love Tyler Mott. They definitely fleshed out their fourth line a little bit, but it's just running thin, I think, the scoring. They had to get rid of Ross Colton, a young piece, and their defense is just. I work for their AHL team, the Crunch, and I see so many Crunch players having to go, specifically defensemen, just because of need or injury. Like their defense core includes like Darren Radish, who was in Syracuse all of last year. A couple other guys. I saw Max Crozier is a guy that got maybe a couple NHL games. Emil Lilleberg got to play a few games. These are guys that are Syracuse mainstays. So I think they're definitely gonna they'll have a shot, but I don't know if they're gonna make it in the end. So that leaves the Red Wings and Toronto. I think Toronto definitely makes it. I think the Red Wings are going to be looking at a wild card spot. I know Toronto had that spell of blowing a bunch of leads, but the Red Wings I think will still make it too. I think they're wild card one material. They're another team that had a pretty bad stretch and around the quarter mark of the season, but they've rebounded pretty well. And ironically, it was when Patrick Kane went down with injury that they started to rebound to form. Does that say anything about Kane's play? I don't know because he was producing pretty well in the lineup, but the team wasn't winning. So I think they'll put it all together. This will be the learning experience year. I don't expect them to go far, but they'll give a one seed a scare if they make it as a wild card.
Well, I mean, I agree with you with the Red Wings. I think they're gonna just sneak in. They're really just, this is their year to make the playoffs after a long, long rebuild for themselves. They're just now getting out of that rebuild, and they've got a ton of nice pieces. Some in Grand Rapids, some actually already on the roster. But I gotta say, I'm gonna disagree with you on the Lightning. Yeah, of course they're getting older. Yeah, they've been replacing guys on the roster, but Kucherov, Hedman, and Stamkos and Point are still those big four. They're still producing at an incredible rate. Kucherov is in the MVP race. He's going to score darn near 130 points this year. I think that's not nothing. I think you can't just go off that way and not make the playoffs. As for when they get in the playoffs, whether they're going to win a round, that's another discussion. But I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs. I definitely think they at this point right now with how the Maple Leafs defense is, they're going to be better than them. But we'll see how it happens long term. If they face the Panthers, if it's another Florida versus Florida series, they might get swept. It doesn't look good how this team's going to look long term, especially with how shaky Vasilevsky's been back from injury. So that's what I'm
Right. I
thinking.
mean, I think that is a good argument, but again, like you look at teams look at how Edmonton was a couple months back. They had their core of guys. Like I don't think there was any injuries. They were producing, albeit at a lower rate than we're used to. But it's that depth at the end of the day. Apart from Brandon Hagel and maybe Nick Paul in stretches, I don't know if there's really any consistent guys that can join them up in that top tier of scoring. You've got your Sorellis and again Hagel and Paul in the lineup, but it's just the results haven't been coming very much. And the defense injuries, I think, are a little understated with how people talk about them. Vasilevsky being back is definitely going to help. He hasn't played as well as you might have liked. A lot of the high tier goaltenders this year really haven't been producing, but I do think he will rebound a little bit. The question is, will it be enough to get them above those other teams? And I think it will be an interesting race, and it could go either way.
Oh, 100%. Let's move on to a more exciting topic, one that definitely is going to get you and I heated about, each other. The Metropolitan. Boy, what a division, huh? It's been
The
crazy
fact that
out
we're
there.
still leading it is insane. I really thought we'd let it slip at this point.
Well, you've got 30 wins. You guys look solid. I'm gonna say this. Despite how I feel about the New York Rangers, you guys are still a solid squad. You need some additions in the way of like kind of depth scoring, especially down the middle, or just depth centers. 100%. You missed out on Sean Monahan. But
Talk about that a little later, but yeah.
yeah, we'll get into that. But it hasn't really hurt you yet. However, the Hurricanes are catching you guys. The Flyers were going to catch you until Carter Hart left.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
Maybe we don't talk about
we
that.
don't have to
It's
talk. We're not going to talk about that right
outside of
now.
hockey, and
Yeah,
it's really tough to see. But the Flyers
really.
were an interesting case study. Like we can go a little bit
You want to talk about the
more.
Flyers?
It's an interesting team. I mean, who saw them competing this year? Like on
Not
the
me.
ice, specifically. I mean, they lose Provorov, who I think took a step back, and you kind of had to get rid of him. Didn't really fit with the team and had some off ice stuff that was going on. But the team itself, like, what in the core changed besides getting Couturier back, and I guess Atkinson for that matter? Was that really the push you needed, or was it something
I
else? Is it
I completely disagree at all. And I completely disagree, honestly. I think it's a couple of young players that came up and became really big additions to this team. I don't think Cam Atkinson did anything. I'm not a big Cam Atkinson fan at all. I actually honestly would think that he's not like that great. It's just like kind of an albatross contract that we have. Couturier is definitely a big leadership boost for us. Why am I blanking on whether or not he's our captain or not? He's not our captain. We don't have a
I
captain.
don't
We
you
haven't.
have them? Why am I blanking on this too? Yeah, you're right.
I
I don't know
think
if you
I
have.
think I think Couturier and Connecting are both A's. I don't think we have a. So, but I think the three biggest pieces to Philadelphia's success this year has been number one, Owen Tippett. Him emerging as the type of scorer that he has been after we just kind of our asset management with him has been insane. And now he's locked down for 8 years, 6.2 million. He has been an incredible scorer, an incredible find. Where else are you going to find a guy that was a top 10 draft pick, didn't really live up to his potential, couldn't really crack the Florida, like the bad Florida Panther squad, not the one we know today, the bad Florida Panther squad, and then gets traded to Philadelphia and then just suddenly shines. He really has been, I think, the lifeblood of the forward core. And is going to be like a power play mainstay for many years to come. Did you see his goal a couple weeks ago versus Dallas?
Yep, definitely
That
did.
is that is
You're right
so
for calling me
far.
out for forgetting about him because he's been a revelation this year. I was focusing more on like an influx of new players, but getting a breakout guy like him, like a breakout season from a guy like Owen Tippett, that's basically like having a new player. And you're right
Exactly.
about the young players. I'm seeing Tyson Forster had a pretty good start to the year. Bobby Brink's been on the score sheet every now and then. I think
He
Igor Zul is
Brinks
pretty
back
young.
down, but you know,
Yeah. A lot of them, though, are producing more than they were before. And I don't even think Brink was in the lineup last year. So you got your
not
young
that
guys
much.
in, and they're doing well. So it spells a lot of good things for the future, despite the fact that they're on a skid right now. Even though Carter Hart was your number one, Urson's been solid, I think. Not really a number one right now, but that could change, you know. And your backup behind him, I think, is Peterson. So that might be an issue you want to address if you're still looking at a playoff spot. But still, the pieces are there, and you saw how they did in the first 40 games of the season. Every team has bad stretches. Look at the Rangers, who we'll get to in a second. I think the Flyers definitely still could make a playoff spot, albeit I
And
think it's a one.
yeah, you mentioned my number two biggest thing for their success. They got a second goalie who is a reliable backup. I think with Hart's disappearance, we might buy on a goaltender. I wouldn't want to. I think you're still at a point where you're still fragile enough where next year could still be a fall off and you could see. I just don't want to risk draft picks. That's my biggest thing. Um,
This year, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Maybe a
but
low level prospect.
number three, and I'll keep this quick because I want to get to other teams. The defensive core has been completely changed around. Cam York and Jamie Drysdale have turned it into a defense that can't get out of that can't transition at all to a defense that has just revitalized our offensive play. I think we've become a much better offensive team because of guys like York, because of a guy like Jamie Drysdale, who completely shifted his game from Anaheim. He was a guy who was like looking like he was going to be a complete bust because he couldn't stay healthy, and when he was in the lineup, wasn't scoring and wasn't defending well. But now he's doing it all in Philly, and I really love how he's been playing. So I
I
I think
think
that
yeah, the last thing I'll touch on, I mean, on that note, I think very low key, the Cutter Gauthier trade could be a good thing just
oh
because it'll help you short term. He's probably going to be a better player in the long run, but if you're looking at this season trying to make the playoffs, I guess he might be better fit, and you would have more like qualifications to comment on this. But short term, he helps your defense and makes your team better this year. So it could have happened at a worse time, and you could have gotten a much worse return.
I I think you're right personally. But the way I look at it, I think it's a complete win for us. I think we get exactly what we need in a guy like Jamie Drysdale who can lead our back end. Plus, that second rounder is going to be a very high second rounder because the Ducks
Yeah.
are not going to be good anytime soon. So I'll take the 33rd overall pick any day of the week. So that's fine by me. Let's now move on to your team. We've talked about my team a bunch.
I kind of
I
want to hear
look
what
at
you have first. I want to hear an outsider's perspective, and then I'll comment on it. I think that's the reverse of what we just did.
I'm gonna be 100% real with you. I don't. I kind of like you guys aren't. You guys are probably you are the weakest team that leads a division right now, but I don't see why you're pulling the panic button. Looking at like scoring, you guys don't look terrible. You have Artemi Panarin, who is still producing like Artemi Panarin. The only thing I would see that's an issue with him is that he's minus right now. But Shesterkin's still playing well. Your defense is still pretty solid. I think you just need depth scoring because you guys are just worried about going far in the playoffs, which again, valid. You should want to go far in the playoffs with the expectations that your team has. Um, I'm just confused why it's so why you guys are just so critical of this team. I think if you guys get hot at the right moment, you guys are definitely showing all the symptoms of a team that's going to get hot at the right moment and win that cup. But that's just
It
me.
is
I'm just scared of you guys. So
So it is inherent to any New York fan base that you will overreact to every minute detail. That's true of the Rangers. That's true of especially other teams like the Knicks and the Yankees. So you'll see that everywhere. So I do agree that some of the panic is overstated. What I will say is this month hasn't been very great, and I'll spell you out the three things that are wrong with the Rangers right now that they do need to fix if they want to make some noise in the playoffs because it looks like they'll make it at this point, and they definitely have a little bit of help from the rest of the division that they're still leading it, but. Number one is just they're giving too many breakaways away. They're giving up a lot of 2-on-1 rushes. They're not getting back in a very efficient way. A lot of their shots or long passes are getting blocked, so they're trying to get a little too fancy with it. And in turn, they're giving up to the counterattack, which they're very susceptible to. And that plays into also Igor Shesterkin's struggles. You expect him to steal games, make these world-breaking saves, and he just hasn't been making them. And I have complete faith in him that he will rebound, but it would be nice to see that soon. The second problem is they had the number one power play at some point. I think early in the month or late in December, they were around above the 30% mark, and they've been around middle of the pack this month. So you have a team that's always historically struggled at 5-on-5 and relies on their power play to sort of get those extra goals. They haven't really been coming, and they haven't been coming at very opportune times either. And the third problem is just that injuries have kind of shaken up the lineup. An already thin roster that you couldn't really add too much to in the offseason because of cap constraints. They added, like, their big additions were Blake Wheeler, who should be a bottom sixer, Nick Bonino, Tyler Pitlick, both fourth line guys, Jonathan Quick, who's a backup goaltender. They didn't really do much to bolster the lineup. So the fact that you have Hedel out ever since the start of November with a concussion that unfortunately is now confirmed to take him out for the rest of the year, that hurts your center depth, and that's forced us to play a guy like Johnny Brodzinski in the third center spot. You have injuries to Kaapo Kakko, which exposes our already thin right wing spot, making Blake Wheeler our number one right wing, and our second right wing, arguably our best one this year, is a left wing, converted left wing, my favorite player, Lafreniere, who's been playing very well there. But the problem is, this
So
is
who's
why
that guy in New Jersey? Who's that guy in New Jersey?
Huh?
Who's that guy
What?
in New Jersey?
Yeah,
What?
number 13,
Huh? There you go.
Lafreniere, not a bust
Yeah.
anymore. Having a great season. But
Wow.
bottom line, we'll talk about trades later. I don't think Monahan or Lindholm was the right way to go, but they definitely do need to bolster the lineup. So I think it's right to panic, and I think people were right to say, like, hey, there's a little bit of flaws in this team. Even when they win, they look a little shaky. But I don't think it's right to say this team's going nowhere, because we've seen that if the team can turn off like that, they can definitely turn on like that. So I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. I think the All-Star break came at a great time, and I've gone on for long enough, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I guess I agree with you right there. That was just a lot. I was like, also, by
Yeah,
the way, Capo Caco, man, rough season for him. I mean, I understand why you guys are shopping him, but like, we'll see. You guys know what you need to do, in terms of just like acquiring talent. There's a lot of guys on your radar.
I
I
don't
would
think we should
assume
ship Taco, by the way. I don't. I know the points aren't there, but he provides some stability to the right wing
he needs a
position,
new start,
and
man. I'm gonna be real
I
with
think
you.
so. But
Yeah.
right now, he's valuable to the team in the role he's in, and we can look at a change of scenery a little bit later. I think he can thrive on another team, but with us, great defensive winger. Great defensive winger.
All right, real quick, let's run through it right now. Who do you think is going to take that third spot in the Metro? We've already established that the Atlantic is going to get two wild card teams in. Who's going to get that third spot? Is it going to be the Flyers, or will the Islanders, Devils, or Penguins take that charge?
Yeah, so I do think top two will stay Rangers, Canes. I think the Canes might jump us, but that's neither here nor there. Third spot. Originally, I had the Penguins before the season, and they haven't really impressed this year. I'm not going to pick the Penguins. I'm not going to pick the Flyers either. I think they'll hang around, compete for a wild card spot. My pick is the Devils, because it's a little bit of me being cynical and thinking that the Devils are just going to turn it on like they did last year. But I legitimately think that they're going through the same arc that the Rangers did last year. Very slow start to the year. But I really just think they're going to pick it up. I think that Jack Hughes will come back at some point. I think the team will gel very well together, and maybe they won't win a playoff round, but I do think that they will find some good form at the end of the year. And I think in this weak division, it'll be enough.
Gotcha, 100%.
What do you
Let's move on now. We've talked a lot about the
Oh,
Metro
you
division.
gotta give your pick. Hold on. Really quick. Let's rapid fire.
Well,
Third seed.
obviously the Flyers. I
Oh,
mean, of course, they've slowed down. They've lost five straight. Um, Samuel Ersson, is in net now. Carter Hart's gone. But I really think that the way that they've been winning, they haven't necessarily needed Hart. He's only had a save percentage of 906, so it's not the end of the world losing him. As long as Cal Peterson doesn't fall off the face of the earth, there shouldn't be a tremendous change, in my opinion. John Tortorella, the way he coaches is that he motivates his players, and just the right guys step up at the right time. Just look what he did in Columbus with that roster that he had there. Um, Obviously his
I think he
tenure in
does
New
more with
York.
less.
What?
He does more with less for sure. Not the flashy teams that have the big stars. I
Yeah.
agree.
That's why I'm so worried for when Michkov comes up. That's gonna just terrify me, because I think we're gonna need to pick between Torts and Michkov, and it's a really easy decision.
That's a
But for right now, I think that he's gonna coach his way somehow into a third place spot in the Metro, win the Jack Adams, get destroyed in the first round because there's a lot that needs to work here. There's a lot more players that they need to acquire and to become a better team. I like Noah Cates. I like a lot of the guys that there's a lot of guys on the roster that I think are gonna be on the contending team that the Flyers have for this vision. That's like Noah Cates, obviously Travis Konechny, hopefully Couturier if he doesn't get too old and fall off a cliff. Obviously Owen Tippett, Cam York, Jamie Drysdale, Scott Laughton. You gotta love Scott Laughton. He is just, I don't care how many points he scores. He just is the best. He's like one of the best grinders in hockey, the best grinder in hockey. Anyway, but let's.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. But yeah, let's move
You
on.
can't hate him. Let's. Do you have any gripes with that? Any glaring mistakes with my love of the Flyers and thinking that they're gonna go far?
No, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think it'll take some work for them to get out of this rut, especially without their number one goalie, but they've proven all of us wrong this long. So I definitely think that they can hold on to it. But we'll see. I have them as a wild card, but they can easily make the jump to 3.
All right, now let's move on now. Let's be real. The Colorado Avalanche hold a lead, but not a firm one, on top of this division, followed by the Stars and then the Jets. These three teams are wagons right now. They look incredible. I think our the SU Analytics Hockey Club has declared like a couple of these guys like player of the week. Is like Thomas Harley was the guy
Oh, yeah.
last week.
Syracuse native, by the way.
Syracuse native. I did not know that. That's
Native Thomas
incredible.
Harley.
There you go. But I guess the most important question is, who do you think is going to be winning the Central Division and why?
You're trying to give me a little subliminal messaging there.
No, this is because he's gonna win the MVP. I'm a big fan of Nathan MacKinnon, obviously Flyers fan till I die, but Nathan MacKinnon, come to the Flyers. I mean, you'd love it here. He'd be a Bryce Harper type guy here. Everyone would love him. But anyway, that's besides the point. Who do you think is going to win the Central Division this year?
No, I don't even think you needed to show off that logo on the jersey because I do think the Avs will hold on. Last year we were talking about how the Avs were a little bit of a cup hangover. I'd say they didn't play as well as they would have liked to start the year, but they finished strong. And it's always the teams that you expect at the start that make the run at the end to get the playoff spot that they didn't seem like they'd have for so long. Like last year, you may have thought, oh, the Avs are going to get third or second, but they end the year, they barely hang on and they get the 1 seed. I think that's what's going to happen this year, although the Avs are a lot better than they were before. And it's going to be a really interesting 3-horse race. As for how the 2 and 3 shake up, it'll be tough to see. Winnipeg just added a new player in Sean Monahan that I don't know if you want to touch on now, but
Let's touch on it now. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so I do think the Avs will be on top. It's really not a lot to talk about with them. I think they just got Lehkonen back, and they just have a well-rounded roster. They don't have to make too many trades, but I think the Winnipeg trade for Monahan, it makes sense in a way. Scheifele and Connor have each been injured individually at times. I think as soon as Connor came back, Scheifele got hurt. Their second center, I'm not sure specifically who it is because they're getting contribution from so many depth pieces. Like Nemesnikov's playing well,
Mason Appleton.
Mason Appleton's playing decently. Lowry's playing well, but you get Monahan, a guy that's a traditional, like, you know what he's going to bring to a team. And I don't know if he's worth a first, but that's what the market commands. And honestly, if the Jets are going to be this good this season, they were top of the league at one point, that first is not going to be as valuable as it would have been maybe at the start of the year. So I think they could get the 2 for sure.
Oh, and you know what? I'm unfortunately, we're not gonna have any parity here, but I completely agree with you. Avs are a wagon. You've got Georgiev, but more importantly, you've got that defense.
I don't like
Nathan MacKinnon's been freaking crazy. He's been insane.
Really has. I do agree with your MVP. I like that one.
Oh yeah.
He's
just, my God.
He deserves one at some point.
I wish there was a most underrated player in the league award because that would go to Mikko Rantanen every single year. No one talks about how good he is. He's just electric. He's actually one of my favorite players. I actually have a picture of him in my wallet. I'm not weird. It's a card of him. It's like a trading card of him. I don't know why I have it. I just always kept it in my wallet. But he's one of my favorite players. I actually wore number 96 in high school. But really? Yeah, that has nothing to do with it. Yeah, it's really cool. But love Mikko Rantanen. They are just built so well. If you want to look up how a cup contending team is built, you would like look up the Avalanche because they look so awesome. And they were talking at some point. They were looking to trade Bowen Byram at some point this year because they didn't need that much depth on defense. That's insane. So I was like,
there. Yeah, exactly. You have excess goods, you can turn them into future so that way you can keep the core around for a while and then shuffle in pieces for the future. It's a well-built team, and I'm surprised, honestly, it took them until 22 to win a cup. And I was even more surprised last year when they lost in the first round. But this year they're what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, their happiness from the cup is going to start to dwindle a little bit, and they're going to be hungry for another. So I think we're going to be seeing a very exciting and scary team in the playoffs.
I don't know if you saw the clip of Nathan McKinnon on 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman, but he just Elliot Friedman was like, it's like, are you satisfied yet? You know, like, do you think you'd play less pissed off like once you win the cup? And he just goes like,
I probably thought I'd feel more satisfied after winning a cup, and I'm just people are asking me, oh, like, are you gonna chill out now, Nate? And
Nah.
I'm like, nah, I feel the same.
I'm like, I might even just play
The
that
guy
clip.
that regimented his diet as much as we saw, the guy that was complaining about not winning, he said, I haven't won shit, and then immediately goes and wins the cup the next year. He is a very hungry player for some success, and I don't think he's going to stop at the one cup. I think he's going to want the MVP, and I think he's going to want that second cup this year, and he's definitely the guy to take him there. And we haven't even talked about Cale friggin' Makar yet. I mean, you got the best defenseman
Goes
in the
without
league
saying.
back end with the most underrated defenseman, arguably in the league, as D partner, Devon Taves. It is such a well built team, and they're without Valerie Nichushkin, and they're still winning. He's in the player assistance program. All they can really do, just add some depth, make sure that injuries can't ruin your team, and they're the number one team.
Well, we've talked enough about the Avalanche, and you touched a little bit on the Jets. We'll get into it later, but I totally think that I'm going to be 100% real with you. I think they win that Sean Monahan trade handily, the Jets. I think Sean Monahan's going to fit perfectly in that system. But we haven't even talked about the Stars yet, and they've been incredible this year. I think as a dark horse, they have a really solid shot at the cup. They are a really solid team on defense. Oh my goodness. Thomas Harley playing the way that he is, Miro Heiskanen being as good as an offensive defenseman as you could probably get in this league. He's been incredible. Plus, they're loaded in the forward core. Amazing. So
They really are. And I'll be a little candid here. We're talking about a race for second place between the Stars and the Jets. I had these two teams at polar opposite ends of the standing at the start of the year. I don't know if I put the Stars in first or second in my preseason predictions. I had them making it out of the West and losing in the Cup final. I had the Jets in last, and I'll tell you why. This is before the extensions to Scheifele and Hellebuck. So when I made that prediction, I was expecting them to be out the door. But even then, I would not have expected them returning, and I never would have expected them to just take off, no pun intended, the way they have this year. I actually think I'll take back what I said before about them getting the two. I do think the Stars get the two, but the Jets are going to be like one of the best three seeds in the league, like the Rangers were last year. We won 107 points, and we were the third seed. I think that's what the Jets are going to be this year.
I think I completely agree with you. But now let's transition, move on here. There are five other teams in the Central Division that we have not even mentioned. I would say three have a shot at making the playoffs. Um, which of those three do you think is going to actually make the playoffs out of the Central? Blues, Preds, or Coyotes?
See, it's interesting that we're talking about the Coyotes in that sense. I think
Wow.
that was crazy, actually. We don't have to mention that. But yeah, before the season, the Coyotes were just making some interesting buy moves. And nobody really took it seriously, probably because we all thought this is a team that was just selling off everybody the previous two seasons. And they were pretty much one of the most blatant tankers in the league. But at one point, they have been in a playoff spot at some points, and they
They look
have.
solid.
I don't know if they're going to take that step this year, but I do think they're going to push some teams around. Now, if you want the answer to which team is actually going to make it out of those three teams, if any of them grab a wild card
Please
spot,
don't say it. Please don't say the Blues. Please don't say
I
the
was going to
Blues.
say the Preds.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I hate the
Not the
Blues. So
Blues.
thank you.
Okay. No, the Preds are interesting. I actually don't know very much about how they're doing in the win column right now, but they started the year courtesy of
Do you
one of
want
our
an
club
update?
who's a oh, here. I want to be surprised. One of our club members who's a Preds fan told me at the start of the year, yeah, they're leading the league in expected goals. And I didn't believe them at first until the Rangers played them, and they were just playing such a high flying offense under Andrew Brunette. Juicy Saros, another one of the goalies that is generally known as one of the most elite in the league, not having the best season, and it still hasn't affected them at times. I think their weird offseason where they both bought and sold a little bit over the past year, somehow it's paid off this year. And I think that they do have a good future to look forward to. And I think their coach is really good. I think their young players are playing very well. And even though they're not going to be at the top of the league anytime soon, I do think there is some good hockey being played there, whether it's going to translate to wins or not. So let's hear where are they at right now? Am I just talking nonsense?
Oh, well, no, they're actually in fifth right now, and they are tied with the Preds for points. And I completely agree with you, dude. They're tied with the Blues for points. But I completely agree with you. I mean, the Yotes were a wagon at some point, but the Preds taking over. Ryan O'Reilly is him, dog, and also Luke Evangelista.
One of the
Nice,
most
really
underrated
good.
young guys in the league too. And
Oh,
O'Reilly was
100%.
signing. I expected him to go anywhere but Nashville, a team that I didn't think was going to add any like veteran presence. They really could have used him, and he's played very well for them on a line with Forsberg. And I think I was proven wrong. Great move for the Preds.
All right, now let's move on to the Pacific Division. Pretty clear front runner. No one really would expect, but the Golden Knights, they're not doing so hot. They're kind of not in contention for first place anymore. The Vancouver Canucks, some would say, I would say, best team in the league. They've been solid, and they just got a teeny little bit better. Why is that, David?
I think it might do with a little bit of something called an Elias Lindholm. I think probably the biggest fish on the market just traded from Calgary the other day. Vancouver loves making these big trades around the All-Star break. This time they trade for a player instead of trading away a player like they did with Bo Horvat last year. I think it's an interesting fit. They did give up a decent bit to get Lindholm, but why not? Why not add more to that vaunted offensive forward core? I mean, you've got a top six that already includes Pettersson, Besser, Miller, three of the top players in points for pretty much most of the season. And then you've got depth pieces that are performing well, like bottom sixers you would never expect. Like Dakota Joshua's been pretty good. Pius Suter's been pretty good. Hoaglander's been
He's a
solid.
he's a top six guy, Pius Suter. He's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's been
guys
fit
that
as yeah.
they just fit like a glove on this team. I think it's the system really that's doing a lot of it. I think they changed to Rick Tocchet in the middle of last year. They didn't really have too much time to gel under him. But he's known as a player's coach, and I think they love his system and they love him and they're playing well for him. Not to mention, we talked only about forwards. They have a potential Norris and Vezina candidate. I think Quinn Hughes is pretty much the favorite to win the Norris right now. Thatcher Demko, don't understate how much of a part he's played this season. Pretty much a down year last year, dealt with some injuries, still one of the top goalies in this league. And he's one of the few top goalies that is actually playing very well this year. A lot of
Oh,
people are having to mention.
100%. He is my number two in the Vezina ranking. Clearly, it's Hellebuck right now, who's number one, but Demko at two, easy. Like that's I don't even need to have a discussion about that. He's been incredible. But gotta love that the Canucks are finally this team that has taken that next step after what seems like they've been rebuilding for forever since the riots in 2011. And now you teased this earlier. Naughty, don't do that to me. If they do make the Stanley Cup Finals, which actually, you know what? I shouldn't even say this because now they're not going to make the Stanley Cup Finals. But if they do make the Stanley Cup Finals, which is the team that they would want to face in, or actually, let's talk about like their path in general. The Pacific Division, still fraught with a ton of teams that look pretty good. The Knights, still the Knights, the Vegas Golden Knights. They haven't been the best. They're probably going to finish second, maybe third, because of another team below them. But they're still the Knights. They're still going to be incredible. Jack Eichel, I can't really put into words how incredible he's been this year. Offensively for them, he's been really awesome. But the big team in the Pacific, the Chris Knoblauch run.
Oh, we're talking about the Oilers. Let's talk about the Oilers. I love this team.
Ew.
Always been a huge McDavid fan. And Chris Knoblauch, former AHL Hartford Wolfpack coach. I have been singing his praises since last summer, and I am so glad. You're shaking your head. I am so glad that all my takes about him being a great coach have come to fruition because they're still on that win streak. They could break the record. I was clamoring for the Rangers to hire him instead of Laviolette. Happy with Lavi, but he's a coach that embodies pretty much all that I want in a coach. He's great with adjustments. He's worked very well with prospects. The Rangers are a team that aren't known for developing their prospects, but when he was coaching in Hartford, had a great season last year, won a playoff round. The times when David Quinn was out in COVID protocol in the 21 season, when Gallant was out in the COVID protocol in 22 season, the team never skipped a beat, and he was just a calm presence outside. So I just think he would have been a great fit on any NHL team, and not to mention he's coaching his former juniors player in Connor McDavid. So that's a great fit
Crazy.
there. And I'm glad to see him succeed there. It's really interesting to see the change from when I saw your quarter season podcast. A lot of people were even mentioning, are they going to be below the Sharks even? And now they're potentially a top 2 seed in the division. It is crazy the turnaround, and I am all for this Chris Knoblauch hype train.
Yeah, me and Rob, we hosted the Edmonton Oilers funeral right back then. Since that point, they fired Jay Woodcroft that day that we released that podcast.
Really? Is that
Since
true?
that,
Oh, wow.
yeah, no.
I wonder what's going to happen to me now.
Since that point, they've been 26 and no, they've been more than that. They've been like 28 and like 5.
Like 26-6, something like that. It's a crazy, crazy stat line.
Dude, I don't like this. I don't. And like I love Connor McDavid so much. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great player. He's the best player in the NHL. Never been the biggest fan of Leon Draisaitl, but I cannot ignore how good of a player he is. He just defies physics. He's so good. Zach Hyman is, I think, the biggest reason.
Been from a couple off seasons ago too. Great compliment on that power.
People didn't really understand what his game was about in Toronto. I've always been a huge Zach Hyman fan. Love the way he plays the game. I felt he was so underused in Toronto, and then once they put him on a line with McDavid in Edmonton, I knew someday he was going to pop off. He's a great, gritty player. Reminds me like he would fit great in Philadelphia. I love the way he plays. He is so underappreciated. I'm so glad that he's playing. Well, he's not in the All-Star game, is he?
No, he's not. But I mean, they'd have to add pretty much everybody in the Oilers' top 6 if they wanted to add those guys. But think about the top 6
everybody.
Too. Right. But I mean, you mentioned McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. Those are your frontline guys. If you want to stack the top line, those are your guys. And then you've got a second line that just casually has Nugent Hopkins and Evander Kane. For say what you want about him, we're talking purely about on ice performance. Pretty solid year for him. They have
really
one of the
more he's really good.
Yeah, one of the more underrated young D-mans in the league too, manning their power play, and Evan Bouchard, pretty big fan of his. And then let's talk really quickly too about Warren Foegele, because how the heck has he been exploding with points? You talk about the Oilers need depth scoring in order to go far. He's going off. Ryan McLeod has done a pretty decent job. There's your depth scoring, and they can even add the deadline. I think that there's just so many good things happening over the last 2 months with the Oilers, which is crazy considering the start that they had. But you were going to say something about Bouchard.
Oh, no. Bouchard, he's been incredible. Think about that draft. That was 2019. He was the pick right after Zegras. He was number 10. No, that was Broberg. 2018. He went 10th in 2018.
Broberg a little disappointed, but
yeah. Believe me, as an Edmonton hater myself, that was kind of fun.
Why do you hate Edmonton so much?
I think they've wasted Connor McDavid. It's fun to hate on Edmonton. They're the Los Angeles Angels of the NHL. But back to brass tacks. Evan Bouchard, tremendous defenseman. So far he has not been the best defenseman from that class. Even from that, even close to from that class, because you got Darlene Dobson's putting up the year that he's doing. He's been incredible.
Yeah, how about him? Yeah.
Oh, I someone was telling me about Dobson the other day. I haven't watched a ton of Islanders game. I have to confess. I looked at his stat sheet and my jaw dropped. I think
honestly, we're on the Oilers now. We should spend a quick rapid fire just talking about some of the teams we haven't got to yet, because that is an interesting player to know. But we want to talk about Bouchard right now. Just very good piece for the future. For every albatross contract to Darnell Nurse that they have, they've got a budding young defenseman there too. And again, trade deadline's coming up. The Oilers' biggest problem has always been depth. You can fix it right there if you have some pieces you can work with. Obviously, they've been contending for a while, so the pieces might be a little thin, but I trust them to make the right moves. Maybe not. I don't trust Ken Holland, but I think that they could make good moves.
I also don't like Ken Holland. That's another reason why I don't like the Oilers. But I'm so glad you mentioned Warren Foegele, another player, Dylan Holloway. I wrote him off. I'll say it. Was never a big fan of him. Didn't like him in Wisconsin. So I watched a lot more minor hockey. I didn't like him in Wisconsin. I never thought he was going to be incredibly productive for the Oilers. He's been up and he's been, again, depth scoring. Good for them. So I've been happy about that. Also, Stuart Skinner, what a rebound he's been having. He's just
I think he's won
backed up.
12 straight games, 17 of his last 19 last I checked. I don't know if he's like one of the elite goaltenders in the league, but he's getting it done. He had a horrible start to the year,
Not
and then
yet.
something clicked, and he's been better.
Dude, I think it's just they relied on Jack Campbell. I think that's the issue. Let's round out the rest of the Pacific real quick, and then we'll get into
There
stats,
is
MVP race.
there is
Or who do you want to
definitely
talk about?
something you should talk about out of the division. A team that was looking to be a contender for the number one seed in that division early in the year. They have a coach,
Wow.
or they had a coach, I should say, by the
Had,
name
yeah.
of McClellan, potential Jack Adams candidate, probably like a month and a half ago. Where is he sitting today? Like, where do you think he is right now?
I believe he is in the can, Mr. David Gold. I think he is out as the
Good
Los
job, Sam.
Angeles Kings coach as of today, as we're recording this February 2nd, 2024. What a turnaround. Can you believe that?
Insane. I think them, the Knights, and the Rangers are three teams that were really good to start the year that have had not the best Januaries. And the Kings decided to take action. McClellan has been on the hot seat for a while. Didn't really talk about that when they were winning, but now they've probably been on the worst stretch of those three teams, and they might be the worst team in January for all I know. They beat us in that stretch, but I can see from some of the other games that I've watched that something just changed. They had, I think, tied the record for longest road winning streak to start a season. I believe that's what it was. And
Yeah.
then after not many injuries, I mean, Cam Talbot regressed a little bit. That was to be expected. But the
Phoenix
team just
Copley.
hasn't been performing. And they haven't even named a new head coach. So they have an interim. And we've seen from like the Blues in 2019, the Stars in 2020, that doesn't necessarily spell doom for your team in the playoffs. But it's interesting because the previous coach to be fired, we talked about the Islanders before, I can touch on them now. They fired Lane Lambert, their coach, and just hired a replacement right then and there. So we're seeing a huge influx of new coaches. I think it's been 13 since the start of the offseason or last offseason. Something I saw. A lot of head coach turnarounds.
If we're on this topic really quick, because the King, before we get into like Pierre-Luc Dubois and why the Kings are so bad,
Oh, that's talking about, yeah.
do you know who the top five longest tenured coaches are in the NHL right now?
So you got to have John Cooper
Of
and
course,
Jared.
he's number one.
Jared Bednar's right there. I think
He's number two. Yep.
He's not a coach anymore. DJ Smith was top 10 at the start of the year, which is
He
crazy.
was.
I want to think about 3 through 5 though, and you can cut me.
Well, I'll just cut you off real quick because I mean I'm not, I don't know 3 and 4 off the top of my head, but can you believe that Sheldon Keefe is the 5th longest tenured head coach, right?
Keefe.
For the Toronto Maple Leafs?
2020 season. The COVID year was his first year, and he's a top 5. I'm done. The head coach
unreal.
Is
I think you and I are just getting old. I think that's the issue.
I think he's the most recent head coach hired in the 2010s. Holy crap!
And like,
I'm gonna move my light a little bit because I actually am curious to do number 3 and number 4. But
yeah, you can look that up. But no, dude, like thinking about like how insecure his job is at the moment, that is insane. That's crazy. But yeah, there's been a lot of coach swapping. A lot of just like people have stepped down, people have just moved. It's been tough.
If you give a name right now, who would replace McClellan if they were to hire someone right now that's on the job market? Gallant's there, Lambert's there, Dean Evason's there, Bruce is there, Bruce Boudreau could be a hire from within.
You know what? You know what I think?
Yeah.
You know what I think is gonna be a kind of a little controversial. I think if they really want to go in the correct direction, I think they would stick out the rest of the year with an interim. Because I think you can't just bring some other guy in and expect to just turn the ship right around, right out with an interim. I think they should make a play for like David Carl, the head coach at Denver, next season, because he just coached the World Juniors team to a gold. He's been coaching a red hot Denver team in the NCAA with Zeev Buium, and Maximo Rizzo. I think that's probably the play to do it. Because the Islanders just hired Patrick Waugh, so we will see how that goes. Because that, again, they haven't really played. They played one game. Did they win against the Canadiens?
The Islanders did not. It was an interesting game because they were down 3-1, and then there was that Gallagher hit that ended up getting him suspended.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah, no, they
5-minute major, and then they lost. They gave up a goal after the power play. But the ovation frame was crazy there. And I'll detour a little bit because I have the list of most recently or longest tenured head coaches.
Yeah.
Jared Bednar is actually 3rd. Mike Sullivan is number 2. I should have expected that.
Well,
Brendan was 4. But then you go down the list, you look at 6 through 10. Number 6 is Lindy Ruff of the Devils. Number 7 is Don Granado for the Sabres. Number 8 is Dave Haxtell. The expansion Kraken have the eighth longest tenured head coach. Andre Tourigny for Arizona is 9, and Martin St. Louis, hired in the middle of the 22 season, is 10. That's insane to me.
So I'm gonna detour from your detour back to another team I want to talk about in the Pacific Division. David Haxtell is the head coach of the Seattle Kraken, and I think that needs to change. As a Flyers fan, seeing what that's done to the Flyers, and now seeing what it's doing to the Kraken, not good. Because you're not getting the most out of Matthew Beniers. That's a problem.
Oh, he's definitely had a sophomore slump for sure, and they had
100%.
that streak, but I think that's been in between some mediocre stretches of play. I think they could still make a playoff push, but they'll need to get hot at the right time. They will definitely need to.
It's only going to come from Daccord. Joey Daccord is the only reason why this team is not below the Flames at this moment.
That start of the year.
They
had Chris Driedger who had a great season before they drafted him, and Joey Daccord came out of nowhere to just have a great goalie run. That's goal.
He was their expansion pick from the Ottawa Senators. I remember Macklemore was the guy who made that pick.
You're right.
Yeah, crazy memory from the vault. But that's like something I always think about when it comes to the Kraken. But yeah, shut out Vegas outside in T-Mobile Park in Seattle. That's
my favorite part about that was the Knights had a tweet. They were like, "Oh, we had so many goal graphics ready, and nope, too bad, you got shut out."
Too bad. Sorry, the expansion team that is less annoying wins against the expansion team that's more annoying. So I was happy to see that. But the Kraken, I think they definitely need a change of head coach. Dave Haxtell, I mean, he's run his course. I'm glad that he got them to the playoffs for the first time ever, and they had a significant run. They took a cup contending team in the Stars to 7 games. And they beat
the series at certain points too. They won game 1. I thought they were actually going to pull it off. And you know what? The future's still bright, but this year might not be the year.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I was a little scared because I was like, I don't want them to I don't want them to be the team to go against the Knights. I wanted it to be the Stars, but you know what? It didn't matter because the Knights won. So let's talk about the bottom of the division. Flames, obviously, rough. They just traded away Elias Lindholm.
They should trade more pieces. Sharangovich is already a great start, playing very well for them this season. Trading Tyler, and they've arguably been producing at the same clip this year. Toffoli, I think he has a higher ceiling this year, but in the future, Sharangovich's ceiling is great. I know Devils fans loved him, and they can definitely.
I think you just gotta get rid of the whole core. Somehow you gotta move all of these guys. I'm going
to be stuck there, unfortunately, but you can trade Hanifin. He'll get you a great return. Markstrom will get them a great return. Blow it up. That's my suggestion. They've been riding this core for like 10 years. They've won 2 playoff series, I think, 1 versus Vancouver and 1 versus who they play in Dallas, and they had a Game 7 overtime winner to win that series.
Johnny Gaudreau. I remember that like it was yesterday. It's crazy.
Oh, and then they won 2 total games in the second round or later since then. They lost the series in 5 to their rivals. At this core, it might have been fun for the fans, but they definitely need to shake up. And they've already had some young players do pretty well this year. Connor Zary is a dark horse candidate for, let's say, top 5 in the Calder voting. They had a pretty decent Pospisil. But they just need to embrace the youth movement. Like Huberdeau's stuck there, but apart from that, I think everybody else is expendable. Kadri's probably stuck.
Now let's move on. Let's finish our standings conversation. The Ducks and the Sharks competing for the first overall pick. You and I have both been looking at.
I'd say.
Well, I think the Sharks needed more. The Ducks, they deserve a first overall pick after what happened last year.
They've been screwed out of it the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we were talking about our favorite prospects, and I'm literally going into next week is going to be, or not next week, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing a full breakdown of the first round, my first round rankings on this podcast in 2 weeks with your friend, Ethan Haytu, who is coaching in the USHL right now. He's a McKean's hockey guy too. So stay tuned for that. But numbers 1 and 2, pretty much on most boards right now, is Macklin Celebrini and Ivan Demidov. And these look like pretty awesome picks for 2 downtrodden franchises that really need it. Which team out of the Ducks and the Sharks really deserves a franchise-changing talent the most?
I think that, honestly, the Ducks do deserve a first overall pick, but I'm going to say the Sharks here just because, last year they ended up with, I think, the 4th pick And their start to the season was just abysmal. I think they had one stretch of 500 hockey, and the rest has just been horrible losing skids. And you've got talent on the team like Hurdle and Couture, who only just came back. They just got a haul for Carlson that didn't really include too many futures. I think that they do have a decent farm system right now, but I do think they need an impact player. And I don't watch too much junior hockey, but I did watch Celebrini play at MSG Red Hot Hockey earlier this year. And despite the fact that he didn't score, it's crazy to watch a guy like him because he treats himself like, or he doesn't treat himself. He looks like the McDavid of that league. He's just skating circles around everybody. And I think that it's tough to project how you translate that to the NHL game. But I just think that the Sharks could benefit so much from just having a youthful infusion like him, where he can just make an instant impact and augment the talents that they already do have in certain places in the lineup.
Yeah. I love Celebrini. I think he's a great play. He's gonna go number one overall. He's nowhere near, obviously, you were saying he's the McDavid of that league. He's gonna win the Hobey Baker this year, hopefully. But yeah, he's gonna be a franchise changing talent for whichever team takes him. So good luck to both those teams. Hopefully it's one of them and not the
And
Blackhawks.
Demidov is not a bad second place option. Last year we were surprised by who went
he's my
second,
three
but
actually, but
he's your three.
he's my three.
Interesting.
I have another.
Talk about that more.
No spoilers, no spoilers. But no, Demidov's good too. He's tearing up the second league in Russia right now, which is really, really awesome. But complete shift. Let's move on to the MVP race today. Nathan MacKinnon and Nikita Kucherov are they're in a dead heat right now. It's literally only those two. The only person who is remotely close is David Pastrnak, and he is 12 points behind. So, David, why is Nathan MacKinnon winning this MVP race?
Well, I know it's funner when or more fun when we debate, but I agree. I think MacKinnon is the guy. I think that I'm used to the voters usually siding with team success and name recognition. Obviously, you get name recognition for both of them. I think that if these two are like deadlocked, everything is 50-50 between them. I think they side with MacKinnon, and I think he should get it just because he's helping to lead his team a little further. Do I think that should be the factor, like the main factor in an MVP vote? No. But I just think like even if he's a little behind in points, his game is just so much more reminiscent of a most valuable player than Kucherov, who has not really been able to lead his team this year. That being said, it's like 1A, 1B with these guys. It's going to take a big like difference in the second half of the season, I think, to find a clear-cut number one. But I do think I have MacKinnon slightly higher right now.
Oh, yeah, same here. I just think it really is a dominance thing. Look at the way MacKinnon's been playing this game. Look at the way he's taking over.
Center versus
yeah, well, yeah, but I think he's just taking over the game right now, especially for the Avalanche, who they need depth scoring, of course, like to go a little bit further. They gotten it in Ross Colton. They've gotten a few bits and pieces here. But when you have a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, who is literally taking over the game every single game, I think he has the fastest hat trick this season in 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
That he had it too, yep.
Wow. Incredible.
Against the Flyers, wasn't it?
No.
Have one against the Flyers, I know.
He did have he had a hat trick against the Flyers. I don't think it was that hat trick though. It was, but dude, I
think the most telling moment from one of the MacKinnon hat trick games is he was on a breakaway for his third goal, and a fan in like one of the front rows just throws his hat before he scores. He knew. That just shows you how dominant he's been this year. Crazy moment, and I think it just speaks to how amazing he's been this year. Crazy player.
You know what's even funnier? There was a game, I think he got a hat trick where there were women in the audience throwing bras and panties onto the ice.
Wow.
Just give him the MVP. He's the cool. Right now he's the coolest guy in the NHL. Zegras has been injured.
Highest aura level in the league. Most X aura in the league.
Zegras is injured right now, and Nathan MacKinnon is taking over for the coolest guy in the NHL at the moment. So just give him the MVP. I don't even care. We're not even 50 games into the season. Give him the MVP. But yeah, that's incredible. All right. Well, thank you so much, David. That's really been all I need you for. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you again to the now viewers of the New Wave Hockey Podcast. This is our 19th episode, and I'm super excited. Next week, I will be flying to Michigan, so we'll see if I even get a podcast out there, but I'll be watching Artyom Levshinov and the red hot Michigan State team. Never thought I'd be saying that, but yeah, they've been looking really, really solid out there. But thank you so much for watching now and listening to my podcast. This is Link Dan Savage signing off.